Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be doing my January wrap up, which is very late, but also it's probably going to be real quick, not gonna lie to you. So January, first month of the year. It did take me a while before I actually read my first book. Like, it took like a week before I read anything in January. I read 5,089 pages across 9 books. I listened to about 149 hours of audiobooks, though I do listen on 3 times speed, so like 50 hours, which is still a lot. My average rating was a 4-star, but I did a lot of rereading, so does that count? And everything I read was a fantasy, and I also think everything was adult. So yes, so as I said, this is actually going to be real quick because there's, I think, only like 1 book that I can properly talk about. Because, so 2 books I read for vlogs, and they're not up yet, so I don't want to talk in full details. Then 1 book there's a live show for, 5 books are rereads, and so like that leaves 1. So the first book that I read in January in 2024 was The Witch Would Not by Olivia Atwater, and this is one of the books that I haven't talked about because it's going to be in a vlog. So again, I'm not going to talk about it very much here. It is part of a new series that she's starting. She is self-publishing these, and it is the Victorian fairy tales. So her first series, which got picked up traditionally, which includes Half a Soul, 10,000 Stitches, and Long Shadow, that it's Regency fairy tales, and now we're into the Victorian era. So it's slightly darker, but obviously still very historical, a lot of detail, a lot of research, a lot of fun folklore that like I personally know of because a lot of it was Irish stuff, and I was like, I appreciate you, Olivia. So yeah, overall I really like this. As I said, I will talk about this in a vlog, but my overall feelings was this was one of her books that took me the longest to get into, I would say. It took me like a good 50% before I like really felt like I understood the characters and like their dynamic and their relationship. But like once I got that, I really loved it. And also like the ending, you will see me talk about it more in another video. So then the next book was Mislaid in Parts Half Known by Shauna Maguire, and this is like the only book that I'm actually going to talk about really. I always read them as soon as they come out. It's just like, I feel like it makes me feel good to like have a book ticked off my goal, because like, you know the way when you first start the year, I like, despite the fact it's only been 1 day, they're like, you're 1 book behind, you're 1 book behind. And because of the fact I didn't read for like the first week, they were like, you're 3 books behind, and I was like, leave me alone. And so it felt very good to just get a book ticked off and for them to leave me alone. So that's why I always like reading these as soon as they come out in January. But as I said, this is the, I believe, 9th book, and this, I will say this is one of the books that is the most like direct sequels. I know a lot of the books in the series, people are like, oh, you can just start wherever. Like there is definitely some that you need to read the others. And I don't know anyone who's actually read them out of publication order. I don't know anyone who has. But like this one so heavily relies on the previous 2 books. The Wayward Children series, it follows the stories of children who have gone through magical doors, which bring them to worlds which are basically perfect for them. But obviously things are never perfect in these worlds, and a lot of the times they end up getting brought back into the real world, and then they have to try and adapt, and there's a school. The books follow a mix between the actual journeys in these magical worlds, but also them trying to, you know, figure out what it's like to be in the real world again. And then this one, as I said, is very much follows on from the previous 2. So the last book followed Ansi. It's still very much, I would say, the main character of this story, and I gave this a 3 stars. This one just didn't work for me as well. I feel like I've been on like a bit of a good streak with them. I've always had mixed opinions. I've never been someone who absolutely loves and adores this series, but I've gone, you know, it's been like 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, you know, it's been up and down. But I feel like the last couple of books I've been like, have been 4s for me. We went back down to the 3 for this one. I feel like this series for me can be hit or miss about the development of like characters and their relationships. Like some, like the ones that I like the most, I feel like you really truly get an understanding of those characters within those. And like, that's not saying that I didn't understand the characters, because I do think we, especially since we already followed Ansi before, we do understand her very much as a character. But I feel like we're kind of just like told relationships and not really, but I never actually felt that. And then I just, the way the story played out, it just very much felt like, it felt like a continuation of the last book, but like not in a good way, as in like, oh, like that last book was unfinished. it just didn't feel like its own kind of story, and I just didn't love the character interactions. And yeah, I just, how the story went and played out, obviously I can't spoil it for you, but it just didn't work for me. So then next up, I actually started my rereads of the Course of Dragon series, but I'm going to talk about them all together because, spoiler, I binge read them all. But next I did read the Rune of Kings, but we'll come back to them because I then read the last 4 all together. So then the 4th book that I read was Along the Razor's Edge by Rob J. Hayes, and again, this one I'm not going to talk about for too long because I have it in a blog. And so it follows Eska, and she was part of one side of this war, and they lost the war, and so she got thrown in like this pit prison, and she obviously just like basically dreams of revenge, wants to get out. This book did not work for me. It comes down to, I didn't care about Eska or any of them as characters, to be honest. And it was so incredibly repetitive, and I don't know, the writing kind of made me cringe because it felt like, no, I was gonna say something real mean. Yeah, the writing made me cringe a little because it felt like, oh, I'm gonna show how tough and harsh she is because she curses a lot. It's like, dar. Here's the thing, is like, cursing doesn't bother me. I'm Irish. But, oh my god, in a book, when literally every single page you have a curse word, it just cheapens it for me, to be honest, because it just, I don't know, it felt cringy to me because it felt like he was like trying really hard to show that I know she's one of the guys and she's like potty mouthed and harsh and all of this, and I was just like, you can do that without this. So yeah, so it felt kind of like it was written by a teenage boy, to be honest. Because I know people love this, so please don't come for me. It just didn't work for me. I was honestly really bored. Not going to talk about this for too long, but the next book that I read was The Girl in the Stars by Mark Lawrence, and I gave this 3 stars. So I read this for the Backlist Book Club, which is Cassidy's book club, and there's a live show for this. So I will leave that link down below if you want full. We have it split into spoiler and non-spoiler sections. I gave this a 3 stars, which is right on track with every other Mark Lawrence book I've read. I don't know, I don't think that he's the author for me, and like, I don't necessarily think that he's like a bad author. Like, I can definitely like objectively see the merits of his stories and his writing, but there is just something, I don't know if it's his writing style or just his way of characterization or what it is, but there is something that keeps a distance that I never fully connect to any aspect of his stories. And as I said, that doesn't mean I like hate his stories. This is actually my favorite that I've read from him so far, but it's just something that it just doesn't quite work for me, and I really want him to, but it just isn't, okay. So yeah, so this story is the first book in the Book in the Ice, and it is set in the same world as the Book of the Ancestor, but we are following obviously people that live in the ice. And basically when you turn, I think, is it like 16 or something, you were basically like tested to see if you're pure, and if you're not, you were thrown into the pit. And Yaz's, who's our main character, her brother is thrown in, and she jumps in right after him, and it is the story of her trying to survive and find her brother. And I will say, as I said, I did actually prefer this to the Book of the Ancestor series, and I think a big bit of it comes down to the fact that I understood Yaz more as a character than I did Nona. And I understand a lot more people like Nona because, you know, she's like the stabby and, you know, kind of like sassy main character, and people really like that kind of a main character. That can be hit or miss for me. I liked Nona, but I didn't love her. She took a while to grow on me, and I did get annoyed by the fact that just nothing ever went wrong for her, which, in fairness, you could also say the same about Yaz as well. But I feel like I understood Yaz's motivations way more than I did Nona's, because Nona's whole thing throughout the entire series is friends. She would do anything for her friends. She doesn't care if they stab her in the back. She will do anything. And I just don't understand that as someone who has gone through like friendship breakups and everything. Like, I had bad friends when I was like a young kid, and through the years I learned to stick up for myself. And by the time I was like a teenager, I was like, no, I'm not doing that. If you're a bad friend, bye. And so I never understood Nona as a character who could have like people do this stuff to her and then just turn around and be like, yeah, that's fine. Like, so I never understood. Whereas jumping into a pit after your sibling, I can totally understand that. I have a sister. I do that. The writing worked a little better for me. Like, I don't think there was anything that different, but I think, I don't know, I feel like he explained the world way better than he did in the Book of the Ancestor. I felt like after reading 3 books of the Book of the Ancestor, I didn't really understand the magic system, whereas 1 paragraph in the Book of the Ice, and I understood it way better. So I just think he did a better job of explaining the magic system as well in this. So yes, so I will say there was a bit of a lull in like the middle of the book where I guess my biggest complaint in this was like, I just wanted her, she was kind of just following everyone around doing what they told her to, and I just wanted her to like stop and like kind of try and fight back nearly, because obviously she's like, I want my brother, I want my brother, I want my brother, but then like she is so easily dissuaded because she's like, what about my brother? And they're like, no, not now. And she's like, okay. And I just wanted her to like fight back a little, and like, yeah, even though like, you know, it still wouldn't happen because that's not how it's plotted. We have to wait a little longer to get there. Just like if they would like, I just wanted to see her fight back a little more because it would have made more sense for her characters, because, you know, she jumped into this pit for him. But I'm actually relatively excited to continue, so fingers crossed. Also, I'm not sure, I think potentially it could have been a thing with the narrator, because I read all of the Book of the Ancestor as audiobooks, and I read this as an ebook, and as I was reading it, I was like, oh, it might have been the narrator and not necessarily the books. And so that brings us back to this. So the last 4 books that I read in January were all of these. So The Name of All Things, The Memory of Souls, The House of Always, and The Discord of Gods by Jen Lyons. As I said, these are rereads, so again, we won't talk about them for too long. The Rune of Kings, The Course of Dragons series by Jen Lyons. What's it about? So this series, it follows Kieran, and in this first book we follow him as he is imprisoned. He is instructed to tell his life story, and he starts telling his life story of the day that he got sold as a slave to the Black Brotherhood, and then they took him to this island and started to train him. And then the person that is with him tells him, no, that's not where your story starts. And she starts to tell his story of when he was 16 and he was a bard's apprentice being raised by his adoptive father. But on the side, he was also a bit of a thief trying to get enough money to escape from the capital. And then one day he breaks into the wrong house and he ends up seeing a demon, and then eventually he gets claimed as the lost son of one of the royal houses. Eventually these 2 timelines converge and we find out that everyone wants a piece of Kieran because he might actually be destined to destroy the world. Like, I both enjoyed this more and less than the first time. So here's my advice to anyone. This isn't really going to be a review. This is how you should read it. To anyone who is reading these for the first time, I don't think they are the series you should binge, because as I said, I feel like by the end, the entire like gimmick of it, having like footnotes and everything like that, like, yes, she tries to switch it up every book and I do appreciate that, but it can get very repetitive. And so I don't think they're books that you should like read in a day and read all 5 of them like straight after each other. I think they're definitely like, I would say once a month, because they are also, because I know from my first time reading them, I left basically a year between reading these 2 the first time around, and that is not what you want to do. You don't want to leave that much time, because there are so many details and characters that you'll forget about, because there are characters that are like really important in book 1 that aren't even in book 2 at all, like only like mentioned briefly by name and then forgotten about, and then they appear again in like book 3 for like 2 scenes, but then they're like a main character again in book 4. So like, you don't want to leave like months and months and months between each book. So I would say like, they're a series that like read 1 every month. I like just like, you know, split it into like quarters, read a quarter a day. I feel like that's the way you should do it. And then, as I said, 1 every month. You're welcome. There's so much that I appreciated about this reread, because like the details. There was stuff I was reading about in book 1 and I was like, oh my god, you had this planned all along. And same with like 2 and 3 and all of that. Like there were things that were happening and I was like, oh my god, like seeing them, and like I didn't pick up on it the first time around. I absolutely loved that. I loved picking up on all of these details again, and like this is definitely a series that I want to read again. And as I said, next time I read it, I'm not going to binge it. Of all things, it is still my favorite. I thought it would change, to be honest, because I thought I would reread usually when I reread series that I love, even books that I gave it 4 stars, which I did, usually I upped the rating because like I love the characters and everything so much that like I can't fathom not giving it. But no, I still actually gave this a 4 star. Like while I did see that there were extremely important things in this book that like are very important for like the rest of the series going forward, this setting and the actual plot itself just doesn't intrigue me as much. Someone out there, some bookish box, please do special editions. Please. So yes, so those were all of the books that I read in January. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.